The last time an Egyptian foreign minister visited Turkey, the world was a very different place. But in the aftermath of the February 6 earthquakes that devastated southern Turkey, Egypt's foreign ministry said a trip by its top diplomat would show solidarity between the two brotherly peoples. The two countries saw relations plummet following the 2013 coup that brought Egypt's current president, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, to power. For the past year, Ankara and Cairo have traded diplomatic gestures, including the possibility of high-level visits. On Monday, Egypt's foreign minister, Sameh Shoukry, arrived in Turkey's port city of Mersin, where he met with his Turkish counterpart, Mevlut Cavusoglu. Shoukry was in Mersin to oversee the arrival of an Egyptian ship loaded with aid and relief supplies.
I have a message of solidarity, support and sympathy for the Turkish people from the Egyptian president, government and people after the catastrophe that hit the country. The catastrophe broke our hearts. We are exerting all efforts to support our Turkish brothers and sisters to help with this tragedy. The aid supplies that we have offered are the least we can do to mitigate the suffering of the people injured in the earthquakes. Giving the international aid ships the priority to cross the Suez Canal has demonstrated the strong ties between the Egyptian and the Turkish people.
Shoukry also made a stop in Syria's capital, Damascus, before arriving in Turkey. The war in Syria, together with several other regional disputes, were at the heart of tensions between Egypt and Turkey over the past decade. But after the quake struck on February 6, Egypt was among dozens of countries to provide quake relief supplies. International aid and support has been pouring in since the earthquake struck 3 weeks ago, killing more than 50,000 people in Turkey and Syria. And to further discuss the Egyptian foreign minister's visit to Turkey, joining me now from Lisbon is Riccardo Fabiani. He is the North Africa Project Director at Crisis Group. And from Doha, Ali Bakir, he is a non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council and a professor at Qatar University. A warm welcome to you both, and thanks for joining me on Straight Talk. So, Ali, Egypt's Foreign Minister Shoukry was in Turkey on Monday to oversee the arrival of hundreds of tons of earthquake aid to the stricken regions. Could you talk to us about the significance of this visit, which came after an interval of at least 10 years?
Thank you very much. I think that this is a very timely, very critical and important and welcome step from both sides. The fact that it is the first in 10 years is in itself very telling. I believe that there have been three factors that motivated the Egyptian side to take such a step. First, the disaster diplomacy, if I may say, which offered a proper excuse or opportunity for Egypt to send its foreign minister. And also second, Egypt's economic status and currently, which is under very pressure. And third, also the will of the Egyptian government to build on what both sides have achieved till now. So the circumstances are very proper. I think that it is also perceived very well from the Turkish side, and I think that now it's up to both sides to utilize this opportunity and to build on it rather than to let it fade away without achieving concrete steps.
So, Riccardo, what do you think? Is this a big development in terms of regional developments, and has earthquake diplomacy created another opening for Ankara and Cairo?
I think it's obviously an important development because it's the first time, right, that the Egyptian foreign minister in a long time visits Turkey. And this comes after the handshake between President Sisi and Erdogan in Doha at the Qatar World Cup. So there is, I would say, to a degree, a desire by both sides, surely from the Turkish side, to move forward with the rapprochement. And I think, obviously, what is happening now with the show of solidarity and support from the Egyptian is definitely something that we shouldn't dismiss. The problem, however, remains that, particularly from the Egyptian side, there are some very clear and I would say difficult to negotiate asks towards Turkey. And these obstacles will remain very difficult to navigate in this rapprochement. It is possible, of course, to conceive that at some point there will be some sort of diplomatic normalization, even though not all of these issues will be tackled. But these problems are still there, and they still need to be properly addressed.
So, Ali, what do you think? What challenges lie ahead? And how would fully restored ties between Turkey and Egypt impact the two countries' political standing, as well as the wider region?
Yeah, I think that there are definitely certain files that pose a challenge to the normalization of relations between the two sides. I believe that the first file would be the Libyan issue. Till now, the Egyptian side didn't radically change its policies concerning Libya, but once he decides to change that status, I think that Libya will open vast of opportunities to both sides on political, economic, security levels, and that will definitely, in my opinion, push the two sides to normalize relations. Currently, the economic situation in Turkey and in Egypt, I think that is a very pressing factor. And yes, despite the difficulty, it might convince both sides to reach an agreement on Libya. And if this happens, then things will be much smoother and easier concerning other regional issues. There is, from the Egyptian perspective, Ankara's policies towards Syria and Iraq. But I think that the situation in Syria should not be dealt from this perspective. It is an independent issue, and at the end it depends on the policies of Assad rather than Turkey and Egypt.
So, Ricardo, Egypt's foreign minister said Cairo will give priority to international aid ships to across the Suez Canal en route to Turkey. How significant is this, and how would this help boost aid efforts to Turkey as well as the two-country economic relations?
I think it's, again, a very tangible, direct move by Egypt to send a clear signal to Turkey that they are, and Syria, that they're on their side, that obviously they're willing to help them. I think it's symbolic also. It's very important right now at this stage to clearly show that there is a solidarity that goes beyond the political divisions that there could be between these two countries. It's also important to remember that even though Egypt and Turkey don't have fully fully developed normal diplomatic relations, they still have economic ties.
Sure, trade ties. Yes.
Exactly. And so this is, in my view, an important part of the picture, which shows that there is potential here to move forward on the file of going back to a normal bilateral relationship.
So Ali Shoukry also visited Syria before arriving in Turkey. Are relations thawing between Cairo and Damascus as well? And what would relations between the two countries look like in the short term?
Well, I think that concerning the Syrian file, Egypt has been the second country trying to mobilize the Arab countries to normalize relations with Assad during the last couple of years, at least visibly speaking. However, the US blocked these efforts. Currently, these countries, including Egypt, are trying to utilize the humanitarian situation to push forward towards normalizing with Assad. Whether this will happen or not, and whether it will help facilitate further the Turkey-Egypt relations remains to be seen. But I think that, as I said before, the Syrian issue is very complicated. There are a lot of players and a lot of interests, and we have the refugees problems, we have the legitimacy problems, and these would pose vast challenges to Egypt and any other country who tries to normalize with Assad without pushing him to make a political transition and contain the refugee problem, at least on the short term.
Yeah, Ricardo, Ali says it's not going to be an easy job, but what would a fully normalized region mean for the world in terms of political stability?
I think this is probably the biggest challenge, but also the biggest potential opportunity for the stability of the region. And obviously that would have a series of positive repercussions beyond the Middle East and North Africa, and which are quite clear, especially for Europe, especially at this time with the war in Ukraine. It's clear that there has been a general trend towards reconciliation between many of the protagonists and the actors that were really involved in the sort of tensions that characterized the region for many years. And it's clear that there are a few missing, I would say, pieces in this puzzle. One of which obviously is Egypt, Turkey, and then the other one is obviously the sort of return of Syria to the sort of general Arab, I would say, international acceptance. And I think that with these two pieces at some point, hopefully in place, that could really lead and open up the possibility of a new era, a new phase in Middle Eastern relations. Of course, we would still have the big issue of Iran, but that's a separate question that is actually much more complicated.
So we only actually see openly, Ricardo, the United States is opposed to normalizing ties with Assad. But is it also the same for the European Union? Do you think the EU countries would toe the line with the United States or adopt a different approach towards Syria since they are so afraid of another refugee influx into Europe?
Well, I mean, it is very hard to answer this question at this stage, given that we are not really at an advanced stage in this kind of process of normalization of ties with Syria. But definitely, of course, considerations regarding stability and migration and refugees, etc., would definitely play a role, right? Because a normalized and stabilized Syria would also open up the possibility, at least in theory, from the point of view of some of the European governments, of then possibly sending back some of the refugees and for sure, preventing the possibility of a new crisis. So these are all issues that would probably play a role in the considerations of the Europeans towards this issue. But obviously right now, I would say, unity of the transatlantic relationship between Europe and the US is so strong that it is hard to imagine that there would be a major divergence on this issue.
So, Ali, let's say, I know it's not easy to materialize, but could the normalization of the region lead to a thaw in relations between Turkey and Syria moving forward?
Theoretically speaking, it's possible, but as I said before, we should not deal with Syria as a normal issue like any other issue like Egypt or the Gulf. It is a special issue which has its own circumstances and problems that should be solved also internally first before going to the regional dynamics and international dynamics. And so far, we have not seen any step from Assad regime towards any kind of concessions or, a kind of reform, which leaves us in a pessimistic situation, unfortunately, at least for myself. But assuming that a positive change happened in the Syrian theater, then definitely this will be reflected positively not only on Turkey and the regional Sham area and Gulf region, but also on the Eastern Mediterranean and on the regional level as a whole. But as I said before, this is a far-fetched idea, at least at the current moment. And I hope a positive development happens in Syria. But again, this depends on what Assad is willing to do. And currently, there are no pressure from any side on Assad to do anything, which is not good in my opinion.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.